Hi guys, today I'm gonna talk about a book written by Irving, The World According to Garp. So this book has been recommended by one of my friends. He told me that it was a good book and I said why not, so I read it. It's a book of 550 pages, a novel. So the story is about a woman whose name is Jenny Fields. She was living in the 40s and she wanted to live by herself. She didn't want to get married and she didn't want to share a life with a man, but she wanted to have kids. And her parents were against this kind of life. They wanted her to marry and live as everybody, but she rejected this kind of life. She wanted to live in her own terms. So she became a nurse, living by herself in one apartment, and by becoming a nurse she was handling some babies. So she wanted to have a baby. And later on she was in charge of nursing some soldiers that came back from the war. And she met one injured soldier that was not able to speak and he had a brain issue. And for him he looks like an innocent kid, and she used this opportunity to procreate with this man, and she had a baby with him without his consent because he was handicapped and he was not able to use his brain. And this soldier's name was Garp, and he was only able to speak Garp. He was not able to speak, so for everything he was just answering Garp, 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 Garp. And that's how she gave the name to her son. She named him Garp. So when she got pregnant, everybody was questioning who is the father, and she never told to anyone who was the father. So she was considered a kind of whore. Even her parents rejected her. And her son, Garp, was kind of a bastard kid. So she struggled to raise the kid by herself, to give her kid a balanced life. So he grew up in a school where she was a nurse. And in that school he discovered a sports, wrestling, that became his passion. And so he became a wrestler, winning a lot of championships. And his coach had a daughter called Helen, which he started to like. And he got connected with her. She was reading a lot of books, but as her father was a coach, she didn't want to be with a wrestler. She wanted to be with a writer because she really loved to read books. So Garp wanted to become a writer and wanted to change his life and not be a wrestler. So he dedicated his life to become a writer. And he asked his teacher, how can I become a writer? And he advised him to go to Europe. So he told that to his mom, I want to go to Europe to become a writer. And his mom was also wanting to be a writer. So they flew to Europe together in Vienna, where they spent some time writing books. Garp was not able to advance on his books, but his mother, she finished her book, which was an autobiography about her own life. And in Vienna he kept in contact with Helen, writing her letters and sharing with her his writing. And she started to like his writing, and she felt that he could become a writer. So when Garp went back to the US, he proposed to Helen, asking her to marry him, and she accepted. And later on, they had 2 kids. Helen became a teacher, and Garp kept writing and became a writer with some not very successful books, but he kept writing. His mom, however, she became a famous writer. Her autobiography became a symbol of feminism, because she wrote about why women cannot live under their own terms, lead their own life, have their own kid, and raise them by themselves. And a lot of people got connected with her, and she created a kind of feminism movement. And she made a lot of money, and from this money she created a foundation where she was able to help women, transgenders, prostitutes, women victims of rape, with one house where they can go and live there and recollect themselves and find a new path in life. So this life with his mom shaped his worldview. He lived among women that were abused by men, women victims of rapes, transgenders, women that wanted to advocate feminism, even some extremism of feminist extremists that cut their tongue in order to protest and show to the world that they had to shut up in the world of man. They called them the Helen Jamesians. And Garp rejected this part of feminism, the extremism. He was intolerant for those intolerant people. So this book explores many facets of gender differences. The gender discrimination, the place of women in society, the place of men in society, transgenders, victim of rapes, adultery, lust, rape, all these topics that was a bit taboo in this period of time, was in the 1980s. He explored those perspectives, from the men perspective, from a women perspective, from feminist perspective. So yes, I think that was one key topic on this topic. That's the main layer influencing also Garp's writing and his view of the world. So Garp, he was in between this misunderstanding of women towards man and misunderstanding of man towards women. He was in the middle, in between those two worlds, the world of man and the world of women. And he himself was not working. His wife was working outside. She was a teacher, and he was a dad at home, taking care of his kids and cooking and all the house chores. And meanwhile, he was writing. So he took the role of the woman, and his wife was taking the role of the man. So you can see again this kind of gap between the world of man and the world of women, and the misunderstanding of those two worlds. So Garp was always asking a lot of questions about what it means to be a man, why women had this wrong idea about men, because most of women, they think that men were liars, cheaters. Even his friend, who is a transgender, he was a football player, and he became a woman. And from her perspective, this new woman, she said all men are liars and cheaters. And he had a lot of conflict on this topic. So this layer of gender differences in the book is very strong. So beside this layer of stereotype and prejudice about women and men, there was a second layer I think was important in the book, is the layer of writing. about what it takes to become an author and all the creative process, how to build characters, how to build a story. So this layer was the second most important part of the book. His mom was a writer, he himself was a writer, but he wanted to be writing some fictional stories. He didn't want to write autobiography. His mom was successful because she wrote her story, but he didn't want to go in this path. He wanted to create some fictional characters out of his imagination. So he had trouble to connect with this part of the creative world, of creating a totally disconnected story from his life. So he struggled to disconnect from his own life, but at the end you can see that his stories are connected to his life. There is no way to disconnect. A lot of inspiration is coming from his own experience and his own worldview about women, about gender, discrimination. Those topics came back in his writing. So even though he tried to create a gap between this and his own life, he was not successful in that. There's still inspiration coming from his own view. And the funny thing is, the author John Irving also put his own view in his books. So an author is not, it's difficult to disconnect totally from your perspective and from your life and your political views. So the author put a lot of his own views in the books, obviously. And even the character, Garp, is kind of similar to John Irving, the author of the book, because John Irving was himself a wrestler for 20 years and a coach for wrestling, and he wanted to become a writer. His destiny was to be a wrestler, and he changed his life and become a writer, exactly the same as Garp, who was a wrestler and a coach for wrestling, and who wanted to change his life to become a writer. So you can see the parallel between reality and fiction, and it's difficult to disconnect those two. So I think this layer on the book is also important. Some key quotes. I wanted a job and I wanted to live alone. Then I wanted a baby, but I didn't want to share my body or my life to have one. Death eventually separates everyone from each other. It is only the vividness of memory that keeps the dead alive forever. A writer's job is to imagine everything so personally that the fiction is as vivid as our personal memories. Writers were just observers, good and ruthless imitators of human behavior. A writer's sense of immortality. If you are in print and on the shelves, you are alive. So I give this book the grade of B+. Thank you guys, and I'll see you on my next video. If you want to read more books, improve your reading speed, and know the books I read and the insights I got from those books, please subscribe to my channel and give me a like.